Hello everyone. I'm going to make a short video outlining some of the key things that you want to be able to do as we transition from Google Classroom to Schoology. Namely, logging into it, guiding your students to log into Schoology via Clever. We're going to talk about setting up an assignment. We'll talk about the different ways you can set up that assignment or attach it to things like Delta Math or Edpuzzle or the ILC software and any other external apps that you have your students use on their Chromebooks. So the first place I want to talk about is how do you go into it? What should you bookmark? So in the PD that I attended, they said that you can basically type in nps.schoology.com. Now, typically I'm on my computer at home, but when I use the desktop in school or I'm using my laptop or a student's Chromebook, when I do nps.schoology.com, it might make you sign in twice. Now, what do I mean by having you sign in twice? If you go to the NPS webpage, which is how I kind of get my students to do it if they don't have a clever shortcut, you can go also to students, come down to student portal, which will log you into Clever. And then through Clever, you would look under the category of learning management. And so you'll see a Schoology icon there. This is how I showed the students how to do it. And if the nps.schoology doesn't work, this would be another way to do it. Go to the NPS website, go through student portal via Clever, and then click on Schoology. Now, when your computer or your Chrome doesn't remember your NPS account, you'll sometimes be taken to the SSO page, that page that has Newark Board of Education on it. So what you see right now on the screen is the dashboard layout. Now, if I click on courses, it kind of lays it out very similar to Google Classroom, where you have cards that represent each of your classes. You don't need to worry about generating your classes. Your classes are going to be pulled through your PowerSchool account. The pain in the butt part is that you'll have the section names or section numbers like you see here for me with my geometry, for my algebra, my NJGPA tutoring sessions, and you'll see both homeroom and computer science. Now, these cards I made. The cards are generic ones that you can find when you first open your accounts. Your account might just have all blue with like a notebook watermark. I'm going to click, for example, on my period 2. If you look here in the upper left-hand corner, this is the card that I created. And so you get the option to change the card that your students will see and that you'll see to distinguish your courses by clicking on Edit Picture. Here, there's some generic images that you can pick, or you can do an attach file. Now, the way I made my cards is I basically opened up a Google slide or a PowerPoint. I picked a design and I typed in, what particular course or my name on it. That way, when the students are looking at the dashboard, they can differentiate between yours and their other teachers' Schoology account classrooms here. So just going back to clicking on one of the courses, you'll notice over here on the left you have the option of materials. Materials are where you're going to be basically posting your assignments and organizing them for the students to navigate. Updates are generic messages that you can send to your students. So think of this like the stream in Google Classroom. So the students can click on updates and get messages from you. Another way to send announcements is to click under course options and you can click on send message. When you do this, you can click on all members, which would be all the students that are in your class. And so you can send a message about you being absent or about a particular quiz or makeups that they need to do. And they can access the messages as well. Gradebook is going to lay out the names of your students. You're going to have the marking period. These two columns you may notice are grayed out. This overall average would be the equivalent of F1 in PowerSchool. And this F1 is really, I think, only calculating from the midterm through quarter 3. So this doesn't have any of my quarter 1 or quarter 2 grades in it. So this grade is basically only counting the midterm and what I've done so far for quarter 3. They don't call them quarters right now in Schoology. They call them MP or marking periods. And I'll show you how to grade this out so the students are not worrying about looking at this unless you share this with them on your smartboard. But you can see each course name is up here. You can highlight it. It'll list whether it's formative or summative, what scale you're using, the due date, and there is an option. I know some teachers like to preload their assignments and have everything Monday through Friday already in a folder or under a particular topic. You can unpublish something. So you could create an assignment, mark it unpublished, and the students won't be able to see it on their end until you publish it. So let's say, for example, here I am in geometry, and I want to make an assignment. We'll get back to the grade book in a moment. So let's talk about materials. You're going to click on Add Material, and you'll be given several options of how to create an assignment. The most generic assignment you could create is simply clicking on Add Assignment. And let's call this, for our training purposes, Test Assignment 1. And my objective to create an assignment and map it to PowerSchool. Now, this is where you would put your description or what you want the students to do. You have the option of importing things from your Google Drive. You also have the option of what's called an annotation assignment. So you can load a PDF, you could load a document file, and have them basically do something very similar to Kami, where they mark stuff up. So for this assignment and for this training, I think this might be helpful for a lot of folks who already have things in their Google Drive, PDFs and things that you print or you share with your students. So I'm going to click Annotation Assignment. And I am going to come to Downloads, and I'm going to pull up something that I gave my students in my algebra class. All right. And we're going to set the due date. We'll set it to this coming Monday. 11:59 is the default. 100 points. Category. We can pick formative or summative, and I'll talk about how to set this up, because this is one of the things you have to get set up before you really start giving out assignments. You have to create your formative and your summative in Schoology, and then make sure you link that to the respective formative and summative in PowerSchool. But it's a one-time thing that you need to do. So we're going to call this a formative assignment. The marking period is here. I don't change the factor. I don't recall them mentioning anything about needing to change that, so I wouldn't mess with it. Automatically publish the grades. Basically, when you post these grades and you map them to PowerSchool, the minute they get mapped to PowerSchool, they'd be visible to both parents and students if they have PowerSchool access. Now, this is where you can get in trouble, is this syncing to SIS. So let's say you want to make an assignment, but you don't necessarily want to put it in the gradebook. You would uncheck this. And that would make it so that you don't map it directly to PowerSchool. But I'm going to sync it, and I'll show you there is an option to only sync an assignment when you're ready to move it. There is an option to change the rubric. I would not touch that. I'd keep it as A plus minus. And down here you have some options. One, you can individually assign a material to a student. You can lock an assignment, which I would imagine would mean the students can't do anything or try to submit it. You can set submissions to be enabled or disabled. So you could disable the submissions. So a student could see the assignment, but when they try to hit the submit tab or try to show off they did something but they really didn't do it, you could disable the submissions. This was the publishing I alluded to. So I could uncheck this, and now it's unpublished. Grade statistics disabled, which means that you can probably get this not to be included in the overall grade in the grade book. Comments enabled. That means that as you put the grades in, you can either comment on the student's grade, or the student can comment and send a message to you about, hey, why did I get an F, or can I make this up? Count in the grade enabled. So again, both count in the grade enabled, and grade statistics are ways that you can probably disable an assignment and just make it something that doesn't count towards their quarter grade. But probably one of the most important buttons besides the publish button is the copy to courses button. Let's say you're teaching multiple sections of geometry or algebra, and you want to take this assignment, same date, same due date, formative, and assign it to more than one of your classes. You will use the copy to course option, and it will give you a list of all the courses where you can copy the assignment. So since I did this in my geometry class here, I'm going to click on my other geometry class. I have a 275 and a 276. So I'm going to check that. It gives you the option of where do you want to put it in that class. These weeks that you see are folders that I created. So for the moment, I'm not going to put it in a folder. We'll get to that in a moment. And I'm going to make it formative. Try to duplicate it the same way. I click away from the box, and I will come down here and we'll click create. If it'll let me. Unfortunately, Screencastify is getting in my way at the moment. Let's see if I can get it. So I can click it. I might have to zoom out a little. There we go. So now you'll see test assignment, the one that we created, is down here with the objective, has the due date, but it says it's unpublished. So as you can see, it mentions that students can't see that material. And you can click on an assignment and you can move it up. You can navigate it so that when the students come in, the assignment you most recently posted is at the top. I tend to do that with my Google Classroom. I know some other teachers like to put things down towards the bottom. Your organization is your organization. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on add materials, and I'm going to add a folder, and we'll call this this week's work. And you could put dates or whatever you want to use. You can color the folder so the students can differentiate from one week to the next. You can even describe what is in the folder. You can also assign when you want the folder to be visible. So let's say I want this folder to be visible at 8 a.m. in the morning, and I don't want to do it yet. So I have the option of publishing, unpublishing, publish on the start date. So I'm going to put publish on the start date. You can also add an end date. So let's say for whatever reason, after you get done with a week's worth of stuff and you don't want people bugging you about work, you say, hey, listen, I have deadlines, and you're not going back and taking a look at that work. You could add an end date that would essentially eliminate the folder for the students to view. Since I know our students are very liberal with their turning things in, you might want to send the end date to the end of June. And that way, if the students need to use the notes for review, they have access to it. So I'm going to hit create to create this folder. And what I'm going to do is, if you scroll down, you'll see this week's work. I tend to put my most recent folders at the top for my students. And I'm going to take test assignment and I'm going to drop it in here. The easiest way to do that is to click on this sprocket. And when you click on something you want to move, select move. The destination is going to be this week's work, which is the folder I just created. And when you hit the arrow to see what's there, you see test assignment 1. And you could duplicate the folder just like I duplicated this assignment. I can actually come in, and in the sprocket, I can even copy a folder. So I'm going to hit copy to courses. And since I'm doing this for both of my geometry classes, I'm going to set this for my other geometry class. I'm going to hit copy folder again. And let's go to the other geometry class. So I come back to courses. That was my 275. If I come to 276, if I scroll down, I have this week's work, I have the test assignment. So copy to courses is definitely a great time-saving thing to help you out. Very similar to what we have in Google Classroom when you can schedule and copy stuff to more than one class. So I'm going to drag both of these up just to keep it consistent. Now, dragging sometimes in a folder is a little bit tricky depending on your mouse. Like you see, it's kind of fighting me a little bit. And you notice here, I have one already put in there. So when you copy folders, if you have, like, let's say your whole week worth of work done in one class, you could make that folder in your period 1. And if you need it for your period 2, make that folder, then copy it. It will copy all of the due dates and all of the assignments for that given folder. That's why here you see 2 test assignments. Because by copying the folder, I copied the test assignment an extra time. So what I'm going to do for the moment, since I haven't put any grades in, no students have done anything, I can easily clean it up by simply deleting an assignment. Now, one of the things to be wary of, we haven't done any syncing yet to PowerSchool. Everything we've done so far is primarily in Schoology. According to the PD that we took, Schoology and PowerSchool is a one-way map. So while administratively PowerSchool feeds our students and our courses so that we can view them as teachers, we as teachers have to do our grades and our assignments in Schoology and map them to PowerSchool. If you try to do something in PowerSchool and then you make a change in Schoology, when you do that sync, you may end up undoing work or making more work for yourself in PowerSchool. I learned that the hard way when I had a midterm and a quarter 2 grade, that when I automated syncing, overwrote the midterm grades and my quarter 2 grades 2 days before the report cards were supposed to come out. So when you sync in Schoology, you need to be absolutely sure you know exactly what you're doing. If you're thinking, oh, I just want to sync this and I want to schedule it and I never want to think about syncing again, I would highly not recommend that you do that. You do not want to get an email from our grading and scheduling department asking you to change hundreds of grades simply because you had a sync button synced. So, life hack for everybody. So let's take a look at what this assignment would look like. So if I click on this assignment, this is basically how we would see it. Over here on the right, you see submissions. So in my group, I had 15 students. Of course, no one's done anything yet. We just created it, and it's not even published. You may notice up here there's something called Immersive Reader. So for your students who would benefit from things being read to them, the Immersive Reader will read the directions and the objectives. So that's an accommodation that you can afford your students. Now, there's another interesting feature that Schoology has for our students who may only read or understand things in Spanish or Portuguese. If you come to the lower left-hand corner, you can show your students. Let me just move my screencastify out of the way. If you click on English here in the lower left-hand corner, you can adjust Schoology so that the students, let's say you have a kid in your class, they primarily need it in Portuguese. You can set this up. If I can get the save button to work, it will take all of the notations and the headings and put it in Portuguese or the student's language. So unfortunately, I am not an expert on the Portuguese side of the game, so I'm going to turn this thing back so we can keep going. But yes, you can change the language of Schoology, and that may help some of your students who are English as second language or English language learners, as it were. All right, so that's a good feature there. Here you see it's a thing called View Stats. That can show you the number of grades, the maximum number of points, who in the class got the highest grade, lowest grade. Again, same options. You can copy an assignment to a course. But what would this look like if you were a student? Well, under course options, you can click View a Course As. and I can pick one of my students, and my students would see this. Again, they would have materials, they would have updates, they could check their grades. And for those of us who are doing Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, they do have access to ILC. Now, there's only one problem with this plugin that I can see. When I had the other students do this, and I have to take a look at their view, if they're looking at it this way, this is actually the way we as teachers look at it. So I'm going to try to click on classes as if I'm him. But if you notice here, even though I'm in my student mode, I'm basically seeing ILC as a teacher. And if they're seeing anything like this, that means this plugin is not configured the way we would want it. All right, but this may be one of those things we're going to have to kind of do a little trial and error with. But I'll show you how I've been assigning ILC to my students. So let's focus on the assignment that we made. So under this week's work, I'm still in the view as a student. If you notice over here, it shows him, Christopher, what's coming up. So right now there's an assignment that's due from last week. He's got to midnight to get it done. And then, of course, me being the clown I am, I made a summative assessment and tried to push it through to the F1 or E2 for the final exam, which was supposed to be for the last day of the school year. But if you click on the assignment we made, that test assignment we made a while back, this should be looking, if I'm in as Christopher, he won't see the PDF this way. If we're viewing this as Christopher, when he comes in, he still gets his dates, but when he clicks on the assignment, you may notice something's missing. And the thing you should notice is missing is our test folder. And the reason our test folder and our test assignment is missing is because right now it is the 22nd. I said that I didn't want that assignment published until this coming Monday. So let's go back into teacher mode. And just for the fun of it, I am going to publish the folder, which if you notice, because it was in that folder, now this assignment doesn't look faded. So if you have an assignment in a folder and you decide to publish the folder, it will in turn publish everything in that folder. So that's kind of the way Schoology is. It's kind of like an old school directory. Anybody that's ever messed with the old Windows operating systems, pretty much anything you do in a folder, it tends to what's the word I'm looking for? Propagate to all the things in the folder, which can be a pain in the butt. All right, so you might want to not unpublish a folder. You might want to publish and unpublish assignments individually, which may seem a bit tedious. But according to the powers that be, we are now learning how to drive a Lexus as opposed to the Ford Focus of Google Classroom. All right, those are the boss's words, not mine. So here, let's go to view the course as Christopher. And now you can see, because I published it, he can see the folder. It's early, but what are you going to do? Here, we're going to click on that test assignment that we made. Now you might say, wait a minute, there's the objective. It shows when I posted it, but you don't see the PDF. The PDF, believe it or not, is actually over here. So when he clicks Start Assignment, he is going to see this almost like as if the PDF were put into Cami. So he's going to have the ability to underline, to highlight. He can type. So if he knows this answer is going to be 8, he can type in the number 8 and the 8 will be there. He can even move it around. He can change the zoom. He can pan, which means he could drag or grab the page. He can select a piece of something if he wants to cut or crop. He can also freehand and write stuff on there. So they have all of the markup tools that you would typically have in one of these editors. Now let's say he got done with the assignment. he would come down here to the lower right-hand corner, and he'd be able to submit it. So here it says the assignment has been received, and from his perspective, he would see that the assignment's been submitted. Students have the ability to resubmit an assignment, so they do give the option unless you disable it. He can go back in and make a mistake, fix a mistake. So if you did grade it and he wasn't happy with that grade, you could give them the option, or you could remove the ability to submit something. So now you see I had entered it, and so there's a draft right here. Now I could close that. Do I want to delete the submission draft? I'm going to say yes. And so the original stays. If he had done a resubmit of the assignment, and let's say said, oh, I didn't mean to do this, what he might want to do is come over here to the eraser, and he erases his mistake. He didn't mean to do that graffiti or that drawing. And now he comes down all the way to the far right. He hits submit, and now it is down as being submitted. Up here, he can see his grades on the assignment. And so now I'm going to go back to teacher mode. So in teacher mode, I can go ahead and take a look at test assignment 1. And here you can see my first submission was Christopher. So when you do preview mode, you might want to be careful. In this case, for some reason, Schoology gives you the ability to literally log in as a student, do their work, and submit it. I don't know why it lets you do that. That seems a little bit bizarre to me, but it does let you do that. So if you do decide to play around with this as you're showing a student, you might want to kind of go undo it for the kid, or have the student redo the assignment. So be careful when you do these kinds of walkthroughs if you're going to model this to the students. So let's take a look at the gradebook. So I added that assignment, and that assignment would be all the way over here to the far right. Now if you notice here I have 221, and yet you don't see the assignment for 224. Now if I go to materials and I go to the test assignment, notice it says available 224 all the way to June 30th. So let's click on the test assignment. Looking at this, it looks like it's been published. It says that the grades have been published. The question I have is that if you go to the gradebook, why isn't the 24th posted? Like I have this blank box, but there's nothing there. The only thing that seems up to date is 221. Well, we could try going down here to PowerSchool. And when you click the PowerSchool link, it'll show you all of your assignments. If an assignment doesn't sync correctly, you'll get a message like this, a failed error. So here, this was the test assignment that we just made. And if you look at one of the errors you can get, is it says a category is required. To sync, first assign a category to the assignment and then sync again. So anytime you have an assignment and it's not formative or summative, it's not going to be mapped to PowerSchool even if you wanted it to. All right. Now, if I scroll down here, this was an assignment that my students did on this past Friday. And one of my students turned the assignment in, so it'll tell me updates are available. You can hit sync, but I do sync per assignment. All right. And the way you do the syncing setup is typically here in the PowerSchool tab on the lower left-hand corner. All right. It'll say in progress. You can leave that. That command's already been done. What I would like to turn your attention to is the sync grade allows you to individually sync assignments. I'd be very wary of pressing sync all changes. Because again, what if you have something that you don't quite want to move, or you want to give the students time to resubmit, or that you need to regrade something? I would only press this if I know I had a ton of stuff that I just haven't moved to PowerSchool. I would say the safer bet is to pick an assignment. You've worked on it, you've given the students enough time, and then you sync the assignments individually, or the ones that you plan on making the bulk of what their grade is going to be on their report card. Under configuration, you get the option to do what's called scheduling a sync. And if you notice, mine is not checked. That is not an accident. Again, when you do this and you set a frequency of daily or weekly, and you pick that day, within the next 24 to 48 hours, the server will overwrite whatever you have in PowerSchool with what you have in Schoology. So my advice, I wouldn't schedule that. I would literally pick what I want to sync so that you don't have any accidental syncing of what's going on. Now down here, something I mentioned is that you have to name 2 categories. One has to be formative, one has to be summative, and it needs to link this way. Now, how did I create these categories? These categories get created, when you go to what's called grade setup. So here at the top, you want to check weight categories, and you want to click on add categories. Now, I did this during the PD because they walked us through it. When you click on add, you type in the name, you put the weight for both formative and summative. The one thing that we didn't get a lot of guidance on, and I think it's something that's going to be upcoming, is weighting the marking periods. The marking periods, I've tried to do the, hey, each quarter is 20%, and the E1 and E2 would represent 10%, but for whatever reason, these weightings have kind of gotten a little off here. So I'm not 100% positive on that. So I did not change my marking periods or my semester weights. I think we need a little more guidance on that. The main rule of thumb we were given in the PD was outside of formative and summative, you probably don't want to mess around with the weights for the marking periods. The assumption being that you move each grade assignment over, and then PowerSchool will adjust based on what the district has set. The only thing they said that we were responsible for was the definition of whether we're doing a formative or summative assessment. If you notice down here at the bottom of the grading periods, you notice here I have a final exam. You can make an assignment be a midterm or final exam, which seems odd to me that it's not built into this marking period setup. But I think we will probably get some guidance on that as we get towards the end of the year. So I would, again, not worry about this so much. I would focus on formative and summative. Keep your grade book scale A plus minus. And down here at the bottom, this is all in grade setup, you want to check both of these. This was another one they brought up. What if, the kids are looking at your Schoology gradebook, which is not the end-all be-all until you decide to sync the assignments, and they go, hey, Mr. Roke, hey, Miss Green, my grades are messed up. The grade you got in Schoology, I got an A in Schoology, and you gave me a B minus in PowerSchool. It might be because you haven't moved over certain assignments, or certain assignments are being weighted differently. So the rule of thumb is you want to hide the overall grade report and hide the grading period grades. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about basically the 2 columns in gradebook that you see here. So if the students go into their Schoology, they should not see this. And let me show you what I mean. If we go to materials, and under course options, I'm going to go back to viewing this geometry class as Christopher. When Christopher clicks on his grades, he should see just the grades he has here. Here he sees what his formatives are, his formative assignments, and any comments if he didn't do it or what have you, he needs to make something up. But he doesn't see his overall grade for the quarter or for the year. So that's the advantage of that. All right. So when you are, and I'll go back into teacher mode, you're doing your grade setup, formative 30, summative 70. Don't touch these weightings until we get further guidance on how we're going to get that to work. I would say don't touch it at the moment. A plus minus, and down at the bottom, hide the grade report overall and the grading period grade. So basically your students are only seeing the grades they get per assignment. And if they want what the average is going to be, they can refer to their Access and PowerSchool. So let's go back to organizing. So if you notice here, this is how I've been organizing my Schoology classrooms. Since we no longer can create the topic, like in Google Classroom, you could create a topic and put, from January 1st to January 5th. For some reason in Schoology, they don't have that kind of idea. So what I've used is folders to organize the different weeks. And so if you come to, for example, week 24 here, which was last week for me, this was the assignment they did Friday, and then they had an assignment, I believe that was Wednesday, and then we had an assignment on Tuesday. So you have it laid out this way. So typically my students know to go into the folder, click on the topmost assignment, is usually the most recent one during the week, and then they start the assignment. So let's pick something using an outside source. So this is using ILC. Now I embedded the ILC almost the same way I embedded it in Google Classroom. If you notice here, I have this paperclip. Now when they click on this paperclip, it's going to tell them that they're going to be redirected. And they should be redirected here. They'd log in as a student. In my case, I'm going to be logging in here, and so you can see it will map them to the assignment for that particular day. Where I got that link was right here. So if you assign something in ILC, you'll click the share option here underneath assign, copy this link in the middle, and that is what I added here. Now to add a link to an assignment, let's just go as if we were creating the assignment for the first time. So in this mode, this is where we create an assignment. There are several ways to do it. You could do a link within the message of your objective to your students, or you can come down here and click the link option this way. You'll paste the link that you grab, be it Delta Math, be it Edpuzzle, be it ILC. And then you would tell them to either click here, or you can call it student task, and you hit attach, and now you have that link. So I'm going to hit, not save changes, I'm going to hit cancel because I don't want to mess it up for my students. But that's one way to do it. So let's talk about an external idea. So one of the things that's going to be a very painful experience, I don't want it to be painful, but I think it's going to be as we transition, is that so much of what we do in Google Classroom is embedded in other places, be it Desmos, be it Edpuzzle, be it Delta Math, even Kahoot. So much of what we do, there's always a link this to your Google Classroom. The problem that you are going to probably face, especially if you do a lot of digital content with your students, is you're going to kind of have to undo stuff, at least until Schoology is at the level of doing kind of what you see here, which is, hey, ILC is kind of built in. I think you're going to have to get comfortable doing things like this, for example. Going to materials, creating an assignment, typing in something like Edpuzzle, click the link below to complete the Edpuzzle, and then you're literally going to have to click a link and go to your Edpuzzle account. And let's say we have an assignment for my students. Let's say it's a coordinate geometry proofs. Again, I know everybody loves this update on Google Classroom. Well, it's over. So in the upper right hand corner, in an Edpuzzle, for example, you click on Share Assignments, you copy that link, you go back to Schoology, you paste it, click here, you attach it. You set up the due date, you set up the points, you say it's formative. If you need to copy it, copy it. If you don't want to publish it, uncheck the publish, you hit create. And if we scroll down here, here's the Edpuzzle assignment. The kids will click on it, and then they got to click on that link. And then they got another page, and they're going to be redirected. Until we can get all of these different apps, be it Edpuzzle, Desmos, Delta Math, to be embedded, there's going to be a lot of linking and then jumping out of Schoology to access those resources. Now here you notice there's a message here. It says this assignment belongs to an archived class. Most of my Edpuzzle accounts, most of my Edpuzzle classes, most of my Desmos classes were all linked via Google Classroom, which means you're going to either have to have your students access Edpuzzle via Clever. It may require you to make Edpuzzle classes, which are not difficult to do, but you're going to have to, again, disassociate them from the Google Classroom, or else you're going to have issues with Schoology, to be quite honest with you. So there is quite a learning curve. There is a lot to do. I believe I covered making an assignment. I believe I covered showing you the folders. I showed you what it looks like for a student to do annotation. I think the last thing I want to show you is what happens when you map an assignment to PowerSchool. So that's where we'll kind of finish this video. And I know I ran a bit long here, but it is a lot to take on. So if we go to the gradebook for the moment, let's slide this over. Let's see if at least the Edpuzzle assignment got put in, and the Edpuzzle assignment got put in. The one assignment that for some reason didn't get put in was the one that we have here. Now this says available 2/24, so maybe I can mess around. Maybe I can mess around with the date. So let's see here. Let's put this date in. We'll put the date. I'll just move it up just so you guys can see the mapping that would go on. So I'm going to move this up to, let's say, today. And put formative in. And I'm going to hit save the changes. All right. So now you see the Edpuzzle. Of course, I put a different due date on that Edpuzzle. If we go into the gradebook, I should see the test assignment because I moved the date up. And I also see the Edpuzzle. So the two that I made here in the training, as long as the dates are either the day of or you set it to publish, it will map here. And then you could put their grades in. So just to show you, let's, for example's sake, let's put a 0 for Christopher's grade here on the test assignment. And we'll put 100 here. And let's say one of my students did really well. I'm going to give them 125. And I'll leave the other ones blank. Now, it will not automatically put a 53 on an empty grade. It will, however, I believe, override that 0, which I'm about to demonstrate to you now. So here we are in gradebook mode. We added some grades here to test assignment. I am now going to go to the PowerSchool link in the lower left-hand corner. And if we scroll down here, I got to move my Screencastify thing. So if you see something floating, you're not losing your mind. It's just my Screencastify toolbar is sometimes in my way. So here we have the test assignment, and because I just added some grades and we just made the assignment live, I can sync it. And the Edpuzzle, which I just created, I'm going to sync it. It is okay to sync something that's blank. It just puts a placeholder in PowerSchool. So we're going to give that a few seconds to a minute to load. And while that's cooking, I'm going to go to everybody's favorite website. And now I'm going to sign into my PowerSchool just to see if those two assignments mapped. I believe I was messing around with, I want to say, my geometry class, period 3. All right. So under Power Teacher Pro, I'm going to come to my assignment list for period 3. And you see the assignment here, 225, was created. The other assignment, the one that I made today here on this Saturday, you see there's 3 students' grades. Let's click on that assignment. As you see the 0, that was Christopher's, got overridden. So you can throw zeros here if you like. Knock yourself out throwing zeros, but when you hit that sync button, our district, which always loves districting, will turn your 0 into a 53, as is our imaginary policy. All right. Now you notice here I was able to put in a grade above 100, even though I made the assignment out of 100 points. Now, if you want to mess around with it here, in PowerSchool, you'll notice what they did. They automatically did the 100 points, and then they added the 25 as extra points. Now, one thing to discuss before we wrap up this video. Let's say, again, as I told you, Schoology is a one-way thing for teachers with respect to grading and updating. Could you manually override something in PowerSchool? Absolutely. The thing you have to remember is, don't go back to Schoology and sync it. It will override whatever you manually did. The other thing you should notice is that for every assignment that you create in Schoology, when you look up here at the test assignment description, you'll notice it'll say Schoology SIS Adapter V2. Now, an assignment that you make in PowerSchool will not say that. So you'll know your Schoology assignment. So if that's your cup of tea you'd like to use, where you say, hey, you know what, maybe I'll just make my formatives in Schoology, but my summatives I'm going to make in PowerSchool. That's your freedom to do. But again, I would not schedule any syncing so that you don't have any conflicts. I hope this video was a little bit helpful. I know, at least from my experience, that this has been a bit overwhelming. This is like going into my 3rd week of using Schoology. So I'm sure there are things that I missed out on or I haven't learned yet. But I hope this video at least gives you a little more comfort about how to navigate Schoology. And I'll be more than happy to help anybody out as we learn how to figure out this new platform together. So thank you for watching.